Discussing world-changing ideas through real conversations, exploring the potential of technology to solve the most critical challenges facing business, people, and the planet. Coming up.
The state of mind that we have promote what we call the cooperation beyond competition. We need to work and we need to cooperate with the other operators, because at the end we will be looking for the same. How to get better use of the resource, how to preserve the impact on the planet. So this cooperation is, I would say, just a question of sustainability for the future.
This is the Real Conversations podcast by Nokia. Here is Michael Hainsworth.
France's telecom giant Orange has its roots in the French Revolution, developing its first telecommunications network in 1792. 231 years later, the multinational telecom has a new revolution in mind, and it has a name: Oscar. It's an acronym for changing the way the company, its partners, and its competitors think about the impact the industry has on the planet. The circular economy is about reuse, and the telecom sees an opportunity to reduce the industry's carbon footprint by reusing existing gear for perhaps the biggest revolution of the modern age, the fourth industrial revolution. Isaura De Albuquerque is the Director of Global Procurement and Supply Chain at Orange. I began our conversation by asking what the acronym OSCAR means.
It's for Orange Sustainable and Circular Ambition for Recertified. We initiated this program end of 2019 with the aim to develop the conditions to operate circular economy in our infrastructure at Orange, both network and IT, looking in a way to improve financial and environmental performance. So if I try to share two words, what is finally OSCAR after these 3 years of the program, I will use two words. The first one is a sort of scoot, because finally it has allowed us to create awareness both inside and outside the company, try to get a common understanding on what are the implications and the required evolution to implement circular economy in the company. What does it mean, operate circular economy in our core businesses? What are the financial values for that and the sustainable value we can get from that? And we have the conviction that being more, I would say, efficient in resources in a context of more and more scarcity, it could, implementing circular economy generates also economic value.
Let's talk about the term circular economy particularly, because it's a phrase that, you know, there was a few years ago that no one was using this term, and now I'm seeing it everywhere. How do you define the circular economy?
From an industrial point of view, circular economy is a way to design out waste. So it means thinking from the beginning how to get a maximum benefit and value from the usage of our resources in a spirit of, I would say, wasting nothing. Think about alternatives to optimize the use of existing resources, question systematically the need to purchase. It is really a change in the mindset and the behavior inside the company, because it requires a change in our business model. And circular economy is a key lever to achieve net zero carbon in the industry, because it brings a better way to be efficient in the management of the resources across the value chain of the telco.
You say that it requires a change to the business model. Now, for someone running an organization that recognizes the importance of being a part of the circular economy and reducing, reusing, recycling to lower a carbon footprint, the idea of changing a business model could be a frightening prospect. How do you go about that?
The telco industry is really, and used to be really, I would say, a linear economy, particularly on the technical area, on the network and the IT side, adding new technologies, adding new equipment, creating more efficiency from that. So it's a permanent, I would say, new resources, new chain, renegotiating that, implementing new infrastructure. So at the beginning of Oscar, yes, it creates fear that the new this equipment recondition, reuse equipment would be less efficient than the new ones. So we spend a lot of time explaining, creating a new understanding, putting in place new metrics in the company, new ways of measure that from a financial point of view, from an operational point of view, from a carbon point of view on what does it mean, convincing internally. But we are also thinking in the way we operate that. And this is really a change. More and more our customers are pushing us. More and more our B2B customers in Orange are asking for that. So we really, the best way is to work on the field. Understand what does it mean, operate that, what does it change, how to do it efficiently with the teams, how to do it with the ecosystem together, because at the end we have the same battle, I would say, in the industry to get a more sustainable and supply chain as a whole in the industry. And this is the way to go forward, working collectively in a different way to manage the resource across the chain.
That's a very important point, that it's one thing for one organization to be focused on reducing their carbon footprint, but bringing the vendors and all the members of the supply chain into the equation is certainly part of it. But I think of that more for things like factories with smokestacks and giant billowing plumes coming out of them. Tell me about the telecom industry, the main area of emissions within that business. You talk about scope 3 when it comes to Oscar. What does that mean?
The telco industry is an industry as a service provider. We are not manufacturing the components, the equipments that we are implementing in our network to provide service to the customers, the final customer. So we are a service provider. We are relying on manufacturers like Nokia, for example, to deploy our network and infrastructure. So scope 3 means our indirect emissions, because it's the emissions related to what we buy to provide a service and the usage of our products that we put in the hands of our customers. It represents for a telco, this is the average, around 85% of the emissions of the telco in the industry. So managing scope 3, it's a key challenge for the telco industry to achieve the net zero carbon journey. It means several things and challenges. The first one is be able to measure precisely the carbon impact of what we buy, of what we use in our networks. This means capturing carbon data from our partner suppliers, better understand where are the relevant levers to reduce, define requirements together with the ecosystem, be able to identify with our partners where we can together bring ideas to reduce the carbon impact, how to push new specifications, new ways of operating the service. Another example, how to extend the use of the equipment. Okay, this is totally in opposite to the current linear economy. How we go for more usage of the existing equipment, not buying new ones. And this is a challenge for our partners also. So this is the first challenge. The second one in scope 3 is really to go in the company with an ambition of reduction, and Orange affirm externally the ambition that we take. This is by 2030, we take the ambition to reduce the carbon emission of our 3 scopes by 45% by 2030. And behind that, what is really important is to put concrete objectives inside the company to boost circular economy. And in Orange, regarding Oscar, we take an objective by 2025 to have part of our capex, 10%, coming from refurbished equipment. This is the way really to accelerate and to boost that inside the company. And the last but not least, also a very important thing to change and to create, really stimulate circular economy is how to think differently and we consider the way we consume raw material in a more granular, modular way. We are an economy, a telco industry that is really packaged, I would say service, art, software, different components inside. We need to look at it in a different way, looking at piece by piece of the value of each piece. And so debundle things to think really in terms of resource usage, each part by itself. So this is for me the key elements.
I'm fascinated by this because I can imagine that the majority of the carbon footprint that a service provider such as yours would have would be in the equipment. Actually powering up and running the equipment would be a much smaller fraction of the overall footprint. Do we have a sense as to sort of what the ratio or the percentages are of, how much of your carbon footprint is tied to powering equipment versus how much of your carbon footprint is tied to purchasing that initial equipment in the first place and everything that was required to make it?
90% is related to the energy that we are using to run the network, the data center, knowing that Orange has worked a lot to increase the renewable energy mix inside the company. So this ratio could change from a country to another, but we also have the benefits of a lot of work done inside the company 4 years ago to go for renewable energy on the different areas, solarization, purchase power agreement with renewable energy in several countries. So this is also a key lever that we work on. And we are pushing also our partners on the scope 3, also for them to go in that same direction regarding the transformation of the mix, energy mix.
It sounds to me like what it means is that about 80% of the scope 3 emissions are tied to the manufacturing side, the design and the transportation of equipment, and therefore it makes a ton of sense to use refurbished equipment.
Exactly.
But as a geek who always likes to buy the latest and greatest toy, can you use refurbished network equipment to meet the needs of 5G and the fourth industrial revolution? I thought you needed all new gear for that.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. We can think that 5G, it's a total change of the equipment in the network. We need to move to 5G to make evolve our services, to have this recent generation of equipment, but it does not mean that it's a total change in the resource, in the infrastructure. And we try to promote a different way to manage resource and raw material to deploy 5G within this circularity stake that we have to tackle, and with a different mindset and practice. For example, 5G refurbished equipment, by the way, Nokia is proposing us part of components with 5G refurbished equipment on the radio part, and it has been worked with Nokia totally in the collaboration around this Oscar program. So it's possible, but it's really a different way of looking in that granular way of looking on the way we manage the resource. 5G is not a unique, I would say, equipment, radio equipment. There's different parts in it. And we have to think on where are the parts that bring really this new generation functionality, and what is the part that we can totally, in a much more generic way, use for different technologies. It's not the thinking we have before, because the partners are selling the bundle of everything. So it's also really a challenge for our partners, but it's possible. And by the way, we initiated it in that spirit with Nokia as an example.
After this podcast, learn more about this and other insightful topics by going to nokia.com/thought-leadership. There you'll find additional information linked to today's podcast. I've heard more than once over the course of our conversation about the importance of bringing the supply chain into Oscar and reducing carbon emissions by working within the supply chain as well. So then tell me about the importance of partnerships in making Oscar a success. How do you work with your partners to reduce your carbon footprint on the whole, as well as within their own world too? Tell me about the secret to working with your partners on this.
from the beginning, we really have the conviction that alone it's just not possible regarding the change it creates in the operations inside the company, that we cannot do it together because it raises questions and challenge the paradigm and the existing paradigm in the market. So we need to push and to influence outside because at the end, it's really, I would say, a common stake to manage scarcity and optimization of the resources that we use. We are in a world of scarcity, more and more shortage in components, future crisis and shortage probably to come also, and we will continue. It's a limited resource, I would say, environment. So our thinking at the beginning was how we compete for in that scarcity of resource, how we work with the ecosystem to see collectively how we can manage better together in a collective way the resource. That's why we begin the journey also with the ecosystem. So the thinking, the state of mind that we have was to promote what we call the cooperation beyond competition. We think that we need to work and we need to cooperate with the other operators because at the end we will be looking for the same. How to get better use of the resource, how to preserve the impact on the planet. So this cooperation is, I would say, just a question of sustainability for the future, because we need to transform, we need to change the standards, we need to bring new ways of operating and create scale from that in the industry and go for more massification. As we have massification in the telco industry in a linear economy, we need to create the new standards and the new economics of a more circular economy. So in that spirit, we have, as an example, work under the umbrella of the GSMA, and GSMA was a total endorsement of that. We have worked with the 20 other operators. As an example, it was last year, and for the Mobile World Congress, we issue a sort of strategy paper on the circular economy for network equipment. The strategy paper aims at outlining the opportunities to create a global and unified vision for the whole ecosystem. But we try to be also very concrete when we share that with our partners, and we put in that paper not only a strategic direction, that circular economy is absolutely a question for and a mandatory question for the future, but also we put concrete recommendation, 9 key recommendations on how we can progress towards greater circularity together. And we continue the journey behind this strategy paper. We launch with part of those operators working groups to work concretely on some thematics and to initiate some concrete actions visible from our partners. One of it is carbon standardization in the measurement. So there's a lot of work together externally. The second one is about how do we have an opportunity to create a unified marketplace between telcos. So this is very concrete. What does it mean? How to make it happen? Which benefits for all? So it's always a very tricky. This working group are with 6 operators. That will be the bulk, and then to demultiply if you achieve a result. And the last working group is about equipment life extension. This is for me a key one. How do we create the same business model? Which equipment we can extend? How do we put the standards of that? How do we onboard our partners in the same rules and standards? And this is the objective of this third working group that is working together today. So this is examples, but we have also examples with our partners. We try also to have regular exchange, brainstorming, exchanges with our suppliers on the IT, on the network, also to find solutions together behind to help us implementing that.
If there was one thing you wanted the listener of this conversation to walk away with, what would the key takeaway be for you?
Cooperation beyond competition, for me, it's absolutely key. And we can do it. It's not because we are competitors that we cannot do it. So this cooperation, it's the only way to create economics from that circular economy and scale. For me, this is absolutely key. We cannot, as a telco, succeed that. We have to put in place the new models with our partners. This has to be a game with our partners. So how do we create the operating models for that? So it has to be with Nokia, with other partners, because at the end, this is the only way to do it. And how we think really collectively in the management of the resource, because at the end, this is about that cooperation between the telcos, but cooperation also with the partners. And the second one is implement, in fact, test on the field, because we see inside Orange that there's also a lot of obstacles inside. Resistance, I think in French, but yes, resistance from the internal. So it has taken a long time really to onboard people, to create awareness, to make understand that. So it has to be concrete inside. So work concretely on projects, demonstrate that it's totally feasible also in the operations on the field. So it's really an end-to-end, I would say, perspective, the circular economy. Ecosystem in one side and the raw field operations really to succeed that.
Building a future that's productive, sustainable, and inclusive in a world that acts together. Discover how by visiting nokia.com/thought-leadership.